Alrighty, I'm here with Tanya Yo, incredible copywriter who we did some work together for about a year. So we're gonna get into all of that. Tanya, thanks for joining me.
Hi, it's great to be here and
Yes,
to
let's just dive right into it. So what we met at a copy chief event, and I've got my view, but let's go into your view of like what was going on in your life that then led you to decide like, hey, I could use some coaching and maybe Brian can help with this. And how did that start?
oh gosh, I remember it vividly because we met at that Copy Chief event just after I traveled to Baltimore for a job interview with my dream like copywriting company. And it was more than an interview, it was also a boot camp. And I was very aware that I was surrounded, like the competition was tight and all that. I had no idea how I'd done at the interview yet, but I had this overwhelming sense of imposter syndrome. I think that more than, the amount of experience I had in copywriting or my skill level, the biggest thing that would threaten to undo all of my hard work would be, my mindset and imposter syndrome. Um, I remember when I was at that event, I was also struggling with like chronic illness. It just begun and hadn't realized it. So I actually don't remember most of what I said when I was blabbing to the crowd. Like everyone's first impressions of me. I don't really remember what I said. I just remember people laughing.
In a good way, not laughing at you.
Yeah, like in a good way. And like I think I was like doing so I used to be a teacher. I think I was on autopilot, like here's a crowd, let's entertain them. But yeah, so I was dealing with that. Um, and I think Lolita connected us and her email came right when, I'd been shortlisted for like a trainee, like 3 months where they would take us on as trainees and like paid trainees. We weren't interns. To write copy to see how well we'll fit in with the company. And at that point, I think I clicked on Brian's website. I looked over his stuff and I saw like, there was stuff uh that talked about dealing with imposter syndrome, but also like owning your authentic self. And I think that a lot of that language spoke to me. And I thought I would give it a shot and like meet you in person for the first time. Um, yeah, I think that that sums it up. I knew that if I didn't get a handle on all the self-doubt, and the inner critic and the imposter syndrome during those 3 months, and if that took up more of my headspace than the actual copywriting, that, it could affect my chances of getting this job. And I was like, I think my whole life I've been putting off a lot of this mindset stuff. It's like, well, you don't really have to deal with it. Just work hard and everything will figure itself
Yeah,
out. But I
yeah.
knew I could feel it. I could feel like, nope, this is the one thing that will drag you down. Like I don't think my skills, obviously I had a lot to learn, but I knew I would put in the work. I knew I would do all of that. Uh whatever they needed me to do on the job. But if I, you know, didn't get a handle on like that the imposter syndrome, um, I wouldn't have gotten far. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so why not just like figure it out yourself, right? Like you were very successful in your copywriting career very quickly. You're like star student for some people and like you've got a lot of people celebrating you being like you got people on your email list and everything. You're so amazing. Like you got all this like affirmation and then a lot of the stuff out there with imposter syndrome is like, well, just believe in yourself. Just like you can do it. So what made you think like, okay, it's worth getting help versus like, well, I just need to believe in myself more or whatever.
I think sometimes you need a voice that's outside of your own head. Even if you read all the stuff about how to believe in yourself, like obviously like that information, it's information that's out there. But I think what I appreciated about working with you is that, like I mentioned in my email, um, I never felt like I was forced to do anything that didn't align with, you know, who I am as a person. You know, I always felt free to say no. Everything that you suggested as a like a strategy or something to try, it was a suggestion. And a lot of your suggestions were great anyway, because I think you were very like attuned to like who I am as a person, very early on. Um, I think someone wrote that you have like you're someone with like the highest emotional intelligence they ever met. I was like, yeah, that describes you perfectly. So I never felt I just felt like I needed someone to like bounce ideas off of every other week. There's some things that I just had to get out of my head. And sometimes in the process, like some of these challenges in the process of just talking to you about it, and I just realized, oh wait, I'm fine. Um,
Yeah, yeah, it
that
happens
happens a
a
lot.
lot.
And then also the weekly accountability to like, okay, what are we gonna do after this session for the next week? You know, we're gonna try. I think I really appreciated that. I've had coaches that were just, I appreciate the ability to decide for myself what's best for myself. I think that's so important. Um, I don't ever want to feel like an automaton. I don't like it when people tell me what to do anyway. So like, maybe that's why we got along so well, because you're so respectful of that. But like, I'm not an automaton. Like it doesn't matter how much more experience a coach might have than me. Like if I don't get to ask questions, if I don't get to figure out if something is right for me, I probably will lose respect for the person and not listen anyway. So um all this is to say that, you know, Brian um is there, like it has been a great sounding board, and like kind of like an accountability partner, and everything I try, I felt like it's either going to bring me closer to who I want to be as a person and as a copywriter, or if I tried it and it didn't work, you know, he provided that safe space in our coaching sessions to talk about why it didn't work, to celebrate the fact that I tried it anyway and now I know better. Like, you know, I tried having a side hustle and, you know, starting an online business, but I didn't enjoy splitting my attention between that and copywriting. Um, so I tried lots of different things to see if I could still keep up with both. And don't feel bad that I've chosen to focus. Like I'm so much happier now focusing on doing what I love.
Yeah,
Um, created so much space for, you know, other things in my life, like going to the park or spending time with my very elderly cat, you know, things like that.
yeah. Cool. Couple things I want to dig into more there. Um, yeah, okay, let's start with like the creating no, let's get to that after. Let's start with the imposter syndrome. It's funny because like, yeah, I almost forgot that that's the reason we started working together,
Yeah.
because it's been so long since we've talked about it or that's been like an issue. Um, so yeah, if you're willing to share, like what helped with the imposter syndrome? Where were you before versus now? And is there anything you remember, like what made the difference?
Um, I think one of my favorite like thought processes that you would put me through is the what's the worst that could happen,
Hmm.
especially with at the time, like with the chronic illness, it was at its worst. It was like it picked the perfect time, you know, when I'm trying to get this dream job and write the best copy I've ever written. Um, you know, I was having terrible reactions to all kinds of food. It was very hard to figure out what I could eat, couldn't eat. Um, so I spent most of the day having those reactions, and the only time I could write was like the first 2 hours of the morning after I got up, and I hadn't eaten yet, wasn't hungry yet. And I was like, if I only write for 2 hours a day, can I really just can I consider myself a copywriter or like worthy of this job? And obviously, I mean, my boss is listening. I didn't just work for 2 hours a day. I mean, the most like creative, like high intensity work was concentrated in those 2 hours, and then everything else, like like research or like admin stuff, like I did in spurts throughout the day. Uh, yeah, and sorry, I know this was about the what's the worst that could happen thing, but like I think you asking like, okay, so what if you just only do the 2 hours a day? Like, can this be good enough? I think you're challenging me to think about, instead of like always reaching for more, like, can I just acknowledge that I'm already doing my best? And actually, I think that's one of the most focused periods I've ever had in my life in terms of like copywriting. Um, and recently when I had too much on my plate, I found myself like wanting to go back to being able to focus so tightly on like doing copy for 2 hours a day, like just sit down and just focus on that. And also like I think during our sessions we also evaluated, okay, like whose opinions matter
Mm.
when it comes to my copy. Because the whole imposter syndrome was around like, you know, can I consider myself a real copywriter? I've only been doing this for like maybe at the time was like over a year, and everyone else had more experience than me. Um, and really realizing like I needed to cut out the noise and just focus on like the people whose opinions matter to me, uh, that I would take seriously. What else did we do? Oh, I saved a lot of like screenshots of people giving me good feedback. And
Yeah.
and then I did my daily acknowledgements. I acknowledge myself. This.
Yeah.
I still practice that right
Awesome.
now. It's just like is a natural part of my journaling process now. So I think, yeah, and as Brian mentioned, I think that helped so much that we forgot this is the original reason I in the first place, because I don't have it anymore. Yeah, I don't. It's not okay. I mean, I think it comes back from time to time. Like people tend like depending on who you ask, it comes back, but it's not as crippling as it used to be.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, and these things can still pop up. And yeah, as long as you're able to move through it without it, yeah, being crippling, debilitating, or just making the whole thing stressful and miserable. And
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it also sounds like a big piece was having this image of your head of like what it means to be like a good, successful copywriter and what's entailed. But I'm only, this is what I'm doing. And then and it's kind of like changing the definition of like, is it? Does it have to be that? It can only look that way? Are there other
Yeah.
like based on what, and kind of breaking that down? And yeah, that's a pattern I see a lot, especially with entrepreneurs and freelancers, of having this idea of like how they should be looking and operating all the way all the time, and then they're not, and then they beat themselves up, and then imposter syndrome and all that just gets um put on top of them. Cool. So yeah, I love to hear that so much of that has been freed up, and then sounds like when it does come back, you know how to handle it and work through it. Cool. Another thing that you talked about was, well, a couple things. So one, if you want to get into it, this was towards the end of our work, where like you were gonna launch a course, and then then we talked about it a bunch and kind of worked on it, and then you're just kind of this realization of like, I don't want to do it. Do you want to share more about that and what you discovered there?
I think I grew up with a lot of let's just call it like you do things because you have to, you have an obligation or a duty, and like you just don't question that. Um and side note, another thing that I really appreciated is that, you also question authority a lot. Like, okay, my authority issues will not be an issue here. Uh, like, um, questioning, okay, this is the way things are done, but is it the way things are done for you? What were we saying before that?
Ditching your
Oh
course.
yeah, yeah. Um, I think I see this a lot in your emails about stories that you have from working with other entrepreneurs. Like we all have this preconceived idea of like this is what you do, this is what you need to do to succeed. These are the steps you take, the products you release, and things like that. And um, that course that I was going to launch came at the long came at the end of a very long line of many things that I did because I thought I had to.
Mm.
Like, don't just depend on one income stream. Start side hustles. Like, okay, maybe uh I love helping former teachers. Maybe I'll start a podcast. And like uh don't copywriters should create an offer. You should do this, you should do that, you should keep putting yourself out there on social media. If you want to keep getting business and things like that. And all these things are great advice, but I was moving at such a high speed that I never slowed down to ask myself if it's right for me.
Mm.
And it gotten to a point like, you know, I mean, and it wasn't easy to walk away because like it took a lot of work to like build my list, and I was proud of that. I was like, I managed to, through the work I'd done, like gather about 200 people who somehow want to listen to me
Yeah,
stories.
you're
And
building something
then
cool. Yeah.
they were excited about the stuff I was putting out and my podcast and the course. And obviously I still want to help people, but it came with a lot of things that weren't right for me. Like I really don't like spending a lot of time online. Um, I don't like being on social media and giving strangers unprecedented access to my life. Even if it's like LinkedIn and it's supposed to be professional, it's not. Okay, whatever. What else? Yeah, it's just I had to, weigh all of these things. Like these are things that I'm supposed to do, like create an offer, blah blah blah. But what do I really want to do? Um, I just want to write really good copy for the company that I work for and spend all the rest of my time offline with the people I love and the animals and being out in nature. Um, and it's okay to let go of these, shoulda, coulda, wouldas and do the thing that I actually want to do. Yeah. It took so long to figure that out. Um, Yeah, and I think I'm grateful that like you didn't just like skip ahead and like give me the answer and be like, Tanya, this side hustle is all wrong for you. You should just stop because I wouldn't have listened to you. I'll be like, oh, he's telling me to give up. I'll run to like reverse psychology. Like that's so you were there every step of the way with, like when I expressed discomfort about being present on social media, like, okay, why don't you try this or try that, and then try it, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work out. And I appreciate that you allowed me to arrive at the conclusion on my own. I don't think any of it was a mistake. I think it was a valuable experience anyway.
Yeah.
Um, it helped me learn more about what I want and don't want. And who knows in the future, um, maybe I'll think of a way to do it that's more aligned with who I am as a person. It's like I'm not closing that door entirely, but it's just wrong for my life right now.
Yeah.
I think that's like I really enjoy I really appreciated having someone back me up when I wanted to say no to a lot of things. and be like, that's not an unreasonable thing to say no to or to set a boundary around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And was that something else that you were working on and doing? Like, were you saying no and putting more boundaries up in your life? Was that a thing before, or was that happening more now with the coaching, or was there anything more there?
Sorry, what can you?
Yeah, just the part about like saying no and having like boundaries and like, hey, it's nice to have someone kind of there to support you as you're doing that more. So was that not a thing you were doing so much before the work? Like, was boundaries and saying no part of it, or you were doing that before and it was just nice to have kind of backup?
I think I was doing it before half-heartedly. I think um before that it was because this whole like setting and enforcing boundaries thing is something I've struggled with since I was a teacher, which is like way before, we did coaching and all that. I would say it was practically impossible as a teacher. So, um, I think because we started with like that 12-week, was it a 12-week program with
Yeah.
the Britain's book. Um, I think doing that and focusing more on that gave me more of a courage to be like, no, my time is really valuable. Like, it's more valuable than what someone thinks of me if I say no to something. Uh, I think that helped a lot. And also, Brian, I keep talking about you in the third person, but like you're right. Because I'm aware that I'm in a case study video.
Yeah.
You conducted this great workshop. I still have the notes up on my wall about dealing with difficult people, having difficult conversations, asserting boundaries, and I I really appreciated that. Um I thought it was really interesting that he held it for women and that a lot of us had the same such similar struggles. Obviously I was skeptical. I was like, okay, can he really like do this like for us? But um he did really well. Like, we had a lot of fun. I'm sorry. I know, I sound super skeptical, but I had a lot of fun meeting all the other women on that call, and practicing asserting our boundaries through role play, um, and just owning the fact that the only thing I can control is like my boundaries and how I value my time. I really can't control how other people view me. Yeah, so I mean, the specific phrase that I have up on my wall is if standing up for myself and my boundaries make me a bitch, so be it. And I think knowing that after the call, I think someone said that on the call. I was like, that's a really good point. And then I wrote it down. Yeah,
I
so
love that. That's
I'm,
awesome.
I'm I'm owning that. Like,
Yeah. Cool. So you got,
sorry, it's so easy to go with the flow and not want to upset the status quo and make everyone happy,
yeah.
especially as a woman, you're conditioned to do that, take care of everyone's feelings. Um, but life is too short for me to like run around taking care of everyone's feelings. Yeah.
Yeah. That's exhausting and never ending, and you can't win.
And I think the questions you asked really helped me realize that. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, cool. So we got, yeah, no longer doing all the things you should be doing, building the business you should be building, because that's what copywriters do, right? They get successful and then they sell a course. So I guess I better do that. Um, and then getting more firm with your boundaries, seeing like really owning more. My time is valuable. I don't just give it to people because they want it. So what's that done? And you touched upon this earlier, like having more time in the day. What's been the difference in time and freedom from before to now?
Um, well, uh, so much has changed. I think like now I'm super committed to my like morning routine, like meditating and doing yoga, and
Awesome.
because for me freedom means nothing if I'm not acting from a place of awareness.
Hmm.
Because that awareness, you have the choice to, you can choose how you react in any situation. So yeah, before we recorded this, I mentioned this happened a bit more recently. Like I'm just gonna commit to this. I want to have like the freedom in how I respond to each situation as much as possible. Basically, I'm trying to become a monk. That's why I shaved my head now.
Yeah, and it
Um,
sounds like reacting more of a proactive reaction versus like,
yeah.
oh, I'm just
Um,
like getting blown around by the whims of everyone else. It's more like, okay, this is being thrown at me. What do I want to do with it versus like, what do people need? What's expected of me or whatever.
yeah, and like mindfulness practices has been helpful with that. Because like all the other types of freedom that I value, like time freedom or financial freedom, they're meaningless if I don't have this, I don't have this awareness. I managed to, so I was an art school student. I managed to make more art and stop thinking so much about what kind of art am I supposed to be making. You know, just making the art that makes me happy, which is,
That's yours?
yeah,
Oh, those are awesome.
yeah, paintings of skulls make me happy.
That's
Um,
fucking badass.
yeah, so I moved to a place that's closer to like this forest park and been spending more time there. Those are the things that make me happy. Like that's what I really want to be doing my time. And obviously like exploring Tbilisi more. I think just 2 weekends ago, we went to like the old capital, which is the nice thing is like it's just an hour drive out of the city and you're in the mountains. And just like sitting there with my partner and enjoying this outdoor cafe. That I think that was unimaginable 2 months ago. Because I was making myself say yes to so many things. Um, and you know, like less is more. It really is. It's a cliche, but it's true for me. Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. I love that. And I love how it can like it. Yeah, it's something so simple as like I'm just with my partners at a cafe, and I'm not worried about a deadline or any of this stuff. Like I can just enjoy that. Um, yeah, that's awesome. And what about is there a difference between like the stress and pressure versus enjoyment of work? Has that changed or shifted? Was it is
So it took a while, but I finally got to the point where, we were talking about, so because I'm such an eager beaver, I'm so excitable. I want to do all the things.
yeah.
All the copy projects at this company are super fun. Um, but at one point I was like working on 5 campaigns, and I realized I wasn't happy. So we talked about, what if you just brought it down to like 2 projects on your plate? And then we examined like where does this like stuffing my plate come from?
Which
And
and let's two at once. That's like that's like your job requirement, all right? That's like that's what everyone's doing. That's what they expect of you. Like your company is very happy if you're doing that. And yeah, you were didn't you like hit your quota for the year in like the first quarter or something?
yeah.
Yeah, continue. Where's this desire to stuff your plate come from?
Um, yeah, it came from a place of like, financial insecurity and worries that like this is what it takes for others to take me seriously, or for my boss to take me seriously. Um, and then yeah, also realizing that wait, I already hit my quota. And I think one thing I really appreciate about our work together is that you made me realize, I don't know why these things don't occur to me. Like sometimes just talk to people and like get some reassurance. So I talked to my boss and I was like, hey, I've had a lot of fun with these projects, but I think I'm spreading myself too thin and I'm going a bit crazy. What if I just did like two at a time? And she's like, before I could even like get my full thing out, she just cut me off and was like, I've never doubted your dedication to the company. Like just doing two at a time is perfectly fine. Yeah. Uh, I've actually, when you bring up like, why don't you just talk to your boss about it or your colleague about it? I think that's something that I do more now because before that I used to keep all my struggles and challenges to myself and I was like, I just gotta figure everything out on my own. Um, yeah, and I've been doing that more often, like asking for help, uh, asking for time with my boss. And that really helps because especially as a remote worker, you can get in your head very quickly when you can't hear someone's tone through an email or text.
Yep.
Yeah, it's totally okay to reach out and have like face-to-face contact and just to see how you're doing and things like that. Yeah, so advocating for those needs, I think that was a big part of our work together as well.
Cool. Yeah. So in terms of like how much of your day was like kind of heavy stress pressure before uh versus now? Like how much like if we're talking about like was it stressful or enjoyable before? How, is it like that now? How has that changed? If it has.
I mean, I finally get to the point where I'm just focusing mainly on two projects at a time. Um, I think before this, I was spending most of my day at the computer. Um, and so maybe like 8 hours. Ugh. And now I've been pretty good about going back to what I used to do when I was sick, which is like the first 2 hours is just like my most creative time for writing like hooks and creative copy, things that need a lot of concentration. Um, and then I take a break in the afternoon to read or run errands or draw because then America wakes up at like about 5, 6 o'clock my time. And then that's when I pick things up again. I have meetings, I do the small stuff that don't require as much. So there's more space in my life now.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and again, totally unimaginable if you told me as a teacher that I would be living life like this today, I would laugh at your face and say that's impossible.
Yeah.
Like that's not humanly possible.
Yeah.
But it wasn't easy. I'm still working on it.
Yeah.
Like some days I have the temptation to like work through my lunch and just want to keep working all day and I have to stop myself and remind myself I'm not doing five things at once anymore. I just have these two projects. I can spread things out.
Yep, you're okay.
Um, the sky's not gonna fall.
Cool. And what about, is there a difference in like your enjoyment of the writing when you're doing it 2 hours a day at this more leisurely pace versus before when you're at your computer 8 hours?
Oh yeah, definitely. Because like right now, I'm writing a lot of copy with Mike Palmer, and he has really high standards, which I appreciate, and he's very frank. Like if he thinks like you wrote something boring, he'll just tell you right away to your face. So it's a really good barometer, and it helps you get in your reps and get better at copy. And
Yeah.
I realized if you want to write copy for Mike Palmer, um, I need to completely focus. I cannot think even about the other project that's for work. I just like today I just want to write ads for this promo and I want to be as creative as possible. I want it to be like, I want it to be something that my partner says, oh, that's really interesting, because it's really rare to hear that.
Yeah.
But to earn it, and it takes all that focus and concentration. And when I know that I only have that one thing I want to work on for my 2 hours and I can go deep into it, it is just you know, there's just so much pleasure in doing that
Mm,
and not have like 10 other things in the back of my mind. And you really need that if you want to be a creative person. Like you really need to protect that, you
yeah.
know?
So is it like, yeah, feeling more pleasure and excitement around the creativity and wanting to like uh give him something cool versus before? Was it more like stress and pressure of I need to make sure I'm doing a good enough job and like
And I think before that I was just running around trying to take take care of all the projects and
yeah,
you
yeah, I need to be
know,
doing everything.
like there was this period of time where he was like, I think we've been writing the same things over and over again. We need to write something new. And then I mean obviously I was like, oh. But I went and looked at the copy. I was like, he's right. Like this is the thing. Like I I need to double down on this more and stop being so distracted by other things.
Yeah,
Yeah. So and obviously when I get to focus, I enjoy myself a lot more.
awesome.
Um, I think before this, I it was just another thing I had to get done, you
Mm,
know. And if I wanted to get it done quickly, I couldn't spend a lot of time being creative about it. Yeah. I was just like write the first thing that comes to mind and hope pray for the best, you know?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, awesome, cool. Yeah, so it's like doing less, you're enjoying it more focused, and doing better work by
Hmm.
giving yourself more of this space. Yeah, it's funny how we think that we yeah need to be doing the 10 million things, and it's like less but better kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Anything else you want to share?
No, I just wanted to say thank you. Like I think the other piece was like getting closer to my authentic self. And I think, you know, I appreciate that a lot of our sessions, it wasn't like you telling me what to do, it was you asking me questions, and then I would proceed from the answers that I gave. Um, again, because of my problems with authority. But yeah, I think a lot of the questions were just I always thought that becoming my authentic self was literally like, oh, it's this thing that exists out there and I will become it one day. But it's your questions were more about like peeling back the layers and like, wait, what do you really want? Um, and who are you really underneath all of that? Like, are you really that person who wants to be on social media and, you know, have a brand and things like that? And like, no. No, and then that's perfectly fine. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, is there anything else you want to say about that in terms of like um where were you in terms of like how much did you feel like you were being your authentic self before versus now?
Oh my God. I was not. I was trying to make everyone happy,
Hmm,
you know. I was saying yes to all these things. I think also when you're a new copywriter and you're just trying to find your footing in the industry,
yeah,
you do anything, right? Like you're just like you keep saying yes to a lot of stuff. And I don't think that was bad. I think that was just part of the journey that I needed to take. Um, but I wasn't aware or asking myself the questions I needed to ask. Like, okay, now that I'm at this stage in my career and I want to reevaluate things, like, are these things still right for me? Like, I wasn't asking those questions. And I think working with you helped me create that habit of asking myself those questions.
awesome. And if you were to like rank it, like give it a number, like scale of 1 to 10, how much were you being your authentic self like before versus now?
I mean, like 4, and now it's like an 8.
Hey, awesome.
I mean, still lots of work
It
to
works
do,
out. Yep. And
but
that's yeah, and sometimes you just find more and more. That's been my experience. Like you just end up finding more nuances and more subtleties of like, oh, man, I've been doing this work a long time. So and I'll be like, oh, I'm being authentic here. And then it's like you kind of find more subtleties of like, nope, okay, that was a pattern. That was uh, another fear that I just wasn't aware of. Like that kind of, that's not one of those things you just read a book or go to a seminar or something. Like, I'm authentic all the time. It's like the way I find it. There's always more to dig up, basically.
Yep.
So yeah, that's all. It's all part of the journey. That's awesome. Um, cool. All right. Well, thank you very much, Tanya. It was so awesome to catch up with you and get all this, and I really, really, really appreciate you sharing everything. If people want to find you, you might not want to be found, so maybe there's nowhere for them to go. But I don't know. Do you have a place for people who are interested in who are like Tanya,
Um,
or can they just wait until you decide you want to engage?
they'll be waiting a long time. Um, if you want to hear more,
You don't have to. You can just be like, nah.
yeah, we can cut this whole part out,
No problem.
And then like, thank you for sharing.
Oh.
She's
Um,
gone back into her hole.
cool. All right. Well, thank you very much, Tanya. This was awesome to hear the updates and really appreciate you sharing. Um, and yeah, that's all. All right. Thank
Mhm.
you.